Welcome to the live conversation on leading before the title. We are currently navigating a paradox. Organizations are adopting generative AI at record speed, yet ROI is stalling because most teams are waiting for a title or a mandate to lead the transition. In the Washington, D.C. metro area and the global staffing industry, we see the result of this every single day. It is what I call as AI Rework Tax, where tools create more noise than value. I'm your host, Rahul Karan Sharma, and on this show, we believe that leadership isn't a designation, it's an act of initiative. My mission is to help you move from the reactive trap to become a confident leader who leads with clarity, even when you do not have a formal authority. And today it's my utmost pleasure to join by a guest who embodies this philosophy. Jossie Haines is a veteran engineering leader who has seen firsthand how tech fails without human centered strategy. She is now on a mission to empower women leaders to secure their seat at the table by leading before they have the title. So, Joshi, welcome to our show. How are you doing today? And before I let you share your thoughts, I wanted to hear your thoughts, Josie, on what leading before the title means for you.
Awesome. Yes. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation. And I feel like leading before the title means don't wait for permission, right? I feel like often we end up expecting like, okay, I can lead this project if I am made the manager or I'm explicitly made the tech lead. And yet
Mhm.
so often in many of the different major shifts in the tech industry, those who thrived and were successful were the ones who stepped up and showed leadership. They're the ones who
Mhm.
stepped up and said, "Oh, hey, what if we do this differently? What if
Mhm.
we are thinking about it in this other way?" And it's not about, one of the things that we need to be careful, right, is, and I talk to women a lot about this, is it's not about doing what I call like the busy work or the work that you don't get rewarded for, like taking notes
Mhm.
or things like that, right? So this isn't about like doing more work for free. It's about
Mhm.
really thinking about what are the things that are going to move the needle? How does it tie to the business impact? And how can
Mhm.
you influence others to see that, hey, this way that you've thought of is actually going to make the desired impact that everybody else wants.
Wow. I think many of us, we tend to just go and do the regular task rather than focusing on how the task that we are doing is making an impact in the larger scheme of things. So thank you for bringing that point. It's just not about being busy, but it's all about making an impact.
Hmm.
And Josie, as we seen, as I shared in my intro, we see many organizations spending millions, billions at generative AI tools. Yet the data shows that there is a productivity issue with the employees. So, from your perspective, why are so many AI initiatives failing to deliver real ROI?
It's because we're not taking the step back and thinking about the strategy. What I'm seeing often is, and that's one piece. I actually think there's two pieces. One piece is, and I'll dive into both of these a little bit. But the first is we're not thinking about the strategy. It's coming in as a mandate from up above. The executives are like, "Hey, let's roll out AI." It comes down the chain, and all of a sudden, it's just like we're doing AI, right? But
Mhm.
what does that mean? Like, what are we actually solving with AI? I think that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other major challenge that I see is that what executives are being sold of like what AI can deliver and promise is very different from what the people actually leveraging it on a day-to-day basis are seeing. And so I
Mm.
think there's this discrepancy going on. And so then if you're a leader in the middle, you're kind of stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You've got
Mm.
leadership telling you, I needed you to implement AI yesterday, do it
Yep.
now. And you've got your team members saying this isn't going to work, and or they're afraid that if it does work, that means they're all going to get fired and lose their jobs.
Mm. Wow. A very good point you are bringing is the trap that many middle management leaders are facing. They become sandwiched between the team members as well as the leaders. And the way you are explaining this, I, in my terminology, call this as a AI rework tax,
Mm-hmm,
where adopting tools without a strategy actually creates more work, not less.
mm-hmm,
And this is, I've been seeing a whole lot when I speak with entrepreneurs or probably the new leaders. They are adapting AI, but the result they are seeing is it has increased more work for them rather than reducing the work. So from your perspective, and before you share your perspective, Josie, I also want you to uh, share more about you. I know you were in the helm of things, working with Apple, so that we can get more context. And what I would like to hear from you is how we can avoid this tax, how we can make sure that our leaders really adopt this AI strategy to the way it should be adopted.
yes. So I'll give you a quick summary of my career. So I've been in the tech industry for actually going on 26 years now,
Wow.
and most of my focus has been on large scale consumer tech.
Mhm.
I left my full time role about three and a half years ago, in fact, now, and have been leveraging being a leadership coach. I'm also actually a fractional engineering leader. My last full
Mhm.
time corporate role was as VP of engineering at Tile. And if you want to talk about leading before the title, I actually crafted that role
Mhm.
at Tile and saw the business impact and got my boss
Wow.
promoted to CTO and myself to VP of engineering.
Mm.
And as I mentioned, actually prior to Tile, I had worked at Apple for a few years. One of my teams built the Siri Music on the HomePod integration, and the other one of my teams built the Siri on Apple TV integration, and we got a technical Emmy for that. And so yes,
Mm.
there's a lot of my career story I can go into, but that's a just those are some of the
Yep.
highlights. And right now, on top of
Sure.
being a leadership coach, I'm also, like I mentioned, a fractional engineering leader. I run a small engineering team on a product called SmartPin. It was actually my hackathon project at Tile, and now we've launched it as a real business that we launched the product in May of last year. So
Mm.
that's a little bit about my career. But going back to the AI question, right? And
Mhm.
what I think is interesting is, obviously AI is the new technology that we're talking about, but this isn't a new problem, right? If you look
Mm.
back, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I think at this point, when like digital transformation was the big thing that everyone was
Mhm.
talking about, and automation just started being talked about, right? It was
Mhm.
again this fear, oh my gosh, all these jobs are going to go away. Like this is going to take over. Everybody has to do digital transformation. And yet,
Mm.
again, it was this hype, let's implement this stuff with no strategy. And then we all ended up kind of realizing, okay, we're not saying that this isn't useful, but it's also not going to solve every single world problem and be the magic wand, right? Um,
Mhm.
it's like, AI is a tool. like any other tool in your toolbox. Like it is a hammer, but every problem is not a nail that you need. And so we need to figure out really under the strategy side, like what are the nails? What are the problems where AI is going to help us, right? I was having a coffee with another engineering leader over the weekend, in fact,
Mhm.
and I was asking, and she works at a large Fortune 100 company, and I was actually
Mhm.
talking to her about this, and I was like, "So how are you rolling it out on your teams?"
Mhm.
And there were some places where she's like, "This works really well here," right? So she's like, once we have designed the architecture and we've gotten the very detailed system design, we're then able
Mhm.
to take a very detailed system design and have AI help us actually code it faster and then build us tests. But she was like, for the system design part, she was like, that's still a 2 to 3 month human people talking and sitting in a room and hashing out what exactly needs to be built. And then actually
Mhm.
I was even, because she was like, but this conversation you're having on Monday, isn't it moot? And she's like, people are using these tools. I was like, but even you, I pinged her on this. I was like, but what is the value? Have you actually gone and measured
Mhm.
where it's improving? Like, is it actually making things faster? And she was
Mhm.
like, that's a step we haven't looked at. And I think that
Mm.
was a really interesting point, because yeah, at first she's
Mm.
like, but isn't this conversation you're having on Monday kind of like moot? Like, why are we still talking about AI adoption? She's like, everyone's adopting it.
Mm.
I was like, but that's not the point.
Mhm.
And I think we're seeing, and I think it was a really interesting conversation for me to have, because obviously they are getting some value, right?
Mhm.
And but it wasn't being explicitly thought of, like, to measure it and look at
Correct.
it that way.
Yeah, yeah. And I think everyone has jumped to the bandwagon of AI. So AI adoption is not an issue. I don't think that's an issue. I
Right.
think
No.
the way you are bringing it up is the impact of that AI, because
Mm-hmm.
everyone is so much in a way to focus to adapt AI. They are losing that thought process on the impact. They're
Mm-hmm.
just focusing on, hey, I'm using AI, hey, my team is using AI, not really thinking of what difference it has made in their day-to-day work from a time perspective. Are they giving more time, or are they giving less time? So that has been the talk of the town, and many leaders are struggling to really see the true impact that team should have after AI usage.
Yeah,
And
and I mean,
that.
to talk to that a little bit more, what I've actually also seen is it also really depends on company scale, where that's
Mm,
really coming into play. So, for example, the person I was
mm,
talking to over the weekend, like, they have a team that looks at the different tools, like figures out what tools works best, does enablement for the teams and all of that. But that's kind of a privilege of working at a very large company that has
mhm,
that. And so there, really, it's almost like, okay, yeah, now you can really double down on where is the value coming in. What I'm seeing at smaller companies and smaller startups is they're being given the tools with none of the enablement piece, even, right? Like, how do you want to be using these in the best ways possible? And so that, if you're like a smaller company, that is really the starting point. um,
mm,
Multitudes is a developer productivity company, and they just did an AI report. And one of the things that was really interesting on their AI impact report was that, yes, the number of PRs increased, which was great, but the amount of out of hours work also increased as well.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
we're sometimes you see people saying like, "Oh, hey, now people are producing this much more code, or this many hours are being saved." But it's like, okay, but is it accounting to more hours being worked? And the other part that
Mm,
that research found, going back to the code perspective, was that to actually get cleaner code that was better to be produced, and this comes into the human part of it, it actually started with making sure that the leaders were saying, like, what we value more than productivity still is high quality and well written code, which means your
mm,
pull requests still need to be small, like you still need to understand what every single line of code means and all of these things. And that ties back to,
correct.
ultimately, this is a human leadership problem.
Correct, correct. And I think one of the aspect is we are not, as leaders, we are not looking at the time that we are investing in uh, when the output is received from AI, how we just go back and forth with the AI chatbot. It takes it's consume more time rather than just doing it in one go. And in my AI leadership workshop or the AI leadership briefing, Josie, what I try to focus on is how our leaders can reduce their time frame or every time they are using an AI from a input perspective, how they can save at least 15 to 20 minutes every time they're using it, and that
Mm-hmm.
15 to 20 minutes for one time, if they are using 5 times in a week, it's equally saving them 75 minutes to 90 minutes an hour in a week. And that's what the focus is on, is how you leverage AI not just to make you feel good but also to make you more impactful. That is the billion dollar question today: is the usage of AI making you impactful or just making you look good in front of the leadership? Uh,
Yes,
I appreciate you
absolutely.
sharing that input on that, Josie. Now, my next question for you is, as we see that the AI enters the workforce, or AI enters in the workflow, what normally we have seen is that it creates a clarity gap. As you were mentioning your conversation over the coffee, that what leaders are asking people to do, middle management, and what middle management is expecting their employees to do, there is a deficit, there is a clarity deficit. So in your experience, what are some specific things leaders need to make explicit to their teams so that they don't get lost in the noise? uh, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think first it starts with, this is a new technology. People
Mm,
need the time to learn it effectively and need to be enabled to do so. So, coming up with practices like, hey, we have a brown bag lunch every Friday where we share best practices, especially from those who are, deep diving into this more, right? Like creating space and time to realize that the curve is going to take a little dip before it goes up, like
mm-hmm.
learning any other new thing, right? We're not
Correct.
magically going to become experts at this. So first,
Yeah.
I think it's really setting up a good system for enabling and learning. Then the next
Mm,
step is, okay, so what is the goal? And so really understanding why you want to roll out AI within your teams
mm,
and
mm,
what that looks like. And kind of speaking to your workshop a little bit, one of the things I work with a lot of leaders on is, you know I think everyone's like first thing of thinking about with AI is like, oh, I can get meeting summaries. And those are helpful. I'm
mm.
not saying that that's not
Yeah.
helpful, but that's
Mm,
just like the top of the little cake. Like that's just like the icing on top. There are so
mm-hmm.
many ways that leaders can be leveraging AI and learning
Mm,
how to be prompting effectively, how to be creating like custom GPTs, like learning this as a skill themselves so that then they
mm-hmm.
can also be enabling and helping other people on their teams in their companies leverage it more effectively as well. And so I think that's the one
Sure.
of the things is, as leaders, this isn't just like, oh, I'm trying to get my team to use it. It's like, how are you leveraging it yourself, because that's also
Hmm.
going to make you be able to then focus more on the human side of leadership so you can
Sure.
save some time, right? And then I think the
Yeah.
other thing is really, what is the problem you are trying to solve, right? I,
Mm.
you know, going back to engineering leaders, I often have been seeing it. This is a conversation I've had multiple times. Is it's a small team, small company. They're told roll out AI, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're experimenting with it on the team." And I talk to somebody I'm coaching or a friend of mine, and I say, "Okay, cool. So how are you measuring this? Like, what?" And actually, the key question that I ask is like, "Okay, so what are your existing bottlenecks? Like, where are your
Hmm.
current performance issues, right? Because if you tell me, oh hey, we're producing so much code, but then like it takes like 3 days to get it out to production, that's a very
Hmm.
different problem to be solving from like, oh hey, our builds take 2 hours, right? And
Hmm.
so you're going to potentially leverage AI to solve those problems in different ways. And so I think it really comes back and starts with understanding and measuring if we're really going to make this from a productivity and performance perspective and we want to improve things, we need to know what we're improving and really having a
Hmm.
strategy around that. So again, the first step may not be implement AI. The first step may be, let's instrument and find where our biggest bottlenecks are so that we then know where we want to focus.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think knowing the where we are struggling, once we know that, that's when we will be able to ensure that the next steps. And I also want to piggyback on what you mentioned from a AI perspective. It is how we can save time for our leaders so that they can more focus on the things that they are supposed to do, which
Mm-hmm.
is managing people, leading people, coaching people. Um, Today, they are most of the leaders. They are so occupied with their own schedule that they hardly have time to manage their team members, and they feel very proud that okay, my team is in autopilot mode. But it is the reality is probably they don't have enough time. They are too much swamped with their day-to-day work. So on that note, Josie, when we were chatting, and when I did my research, you do an amazing job when it comes to coaching women leaders to get that seat on the table, making sure that they are more visible. If a woman in leadership, or if anyone in the leadership journey in the tech side listening to our episode right now, explain to them what you exactly do and how they can work with you and what kind of transformation they can see while working and collaborating with you, Jesse.
Yes. So my focus is really, like you said, I love helping women leaders really get that seat at the table. And I also really love helping engineering leaders go from being the great executor, like and from the execution piece that they tend to be, to that strategic leader that again gets them that seat at the table.
Mm.
And it's a very personalized and custom journey. I usually work with folks one on one, and we really dive into like what are the actual challenges that are coming up, like where are the gaps, right? So often I see, and especially with women, it's we're told, oh, just work harder, and that's most likely what got you to those first management roles, right? But that's not what gets you to director level. That's not what gets
Mhm.
you to VP level. And it's really about how do you switch to thinking about what is the business impact? How do you create space for strategic thinking? What does rolling out a strategy really mean, right? Everyone's
Mhm.
told, like, oh, be more strategic, right? One of the things I literally just walked a current coaching client through was, here's how you design the team vision, and then here's how you actually turn that into a strategy, and how do you influence an executive at the who is not, easy to influence and align with
Hmm.
what they want and desire. And
Correct.
there's all
Correct.
these little skills that you need to learn to do these things. And that's what I help people with. And it's really about meeting
Mhm.
them where they're at on the journey. I
Mm.
also have a small group coaching program for engineering leaders that is actually starting at the end of the month, and that's actually going to be a combination of leadership group coaching and an AI workshop where I actually showcase some of these AI strategies. And so, the
Wow.
best place for somebody to reach out and meet with me is look me up on LinkedIn. You can book a free strategy call or send me a DM.
Awesome. And I'm very confident that people working with you will really see that true transformation coming in. And before I go to our to end our show, I wanted to take your inputs on something around this the common mindset that people have around AI. Uh, Today, people are using AI and they are seeing great results when it
Mhm.
comes to drafting the summaries, when it comes to writing the minutes of the meeting, writing an email. And they have this mindset that, man, I have done wonders. I'm really too much into AI. Now, someone who is an expert in this field, uh, guide us that that kind of usage, how much far people are in terms of realizing the true potential of AI. Enlighten us.
Yeah, and so I think, and again, I don't want to devalue the fact that like creating meeting summaries is great. It like saves us time. We
Yes,
don't have to capture
absolutely. Hmm.
takeaways and all those things. But there is just so much more where again, it's about I'm an engineer, right? So I think about systems. I think about what are the repeatable things that you are doing on a day-to-day, weekly, or monthly basis where you can leverage AI to solve these things, right? And so, what I tell people to do is just first start, look at your week, look at your month. What are the things that you do all the time that are pretty manual and are not your superpower, are not what actually make you a better leader? And look at, hey, how can I leverage AI to help me do these things? And once you've gotten it working the first time, how do you then turn it into something like a custom GPT so that you can do this repeatedly? Prime example for me, I do roadmap planning for my for the engineering team that I work on, actually, and for the whole small company. And so I save hours like having a GPT where I can feed all the tickets, all the people, all the constraints on time, and say, like, hey, help me come up with a roadmap. And like, here's some different variants. And it'll come up with different variants for me. I can tweak it, I can have it exported into a tool that I can then tweak it myself. And now I have something that every quarter when I go do the roadmap planning, I can leverage. So, yes, it took a little bit of upfront time, but now I've got something repeatable. In
Hmm.
my, for my meetings, I don't just take meeting summaries and take them from that. I actually have built myself one as a coach where it coaches me on looking at the results from my meetings and says, how are you showing? How am I showing up in meetings? So I get myself feedback on like
Hmm.
how I performed in a meeting. And so I think
Hmm.
it's really about starting from like, what are the problems? And I've been talking about a lot of like tech challenges, right? But for example, um, I was working with a marketing team a few weeks ago, and they were leveraging um, a clay to help them uh, create customized and personalized messages and do research, but they noticed that it was like dropping a lot of information and wasn't
Hmm.
gathering all the information that there was. And so I helped. There's some strategies to also think about, like, how do you leverage AI to like validate or have it create like a checklist first before it actually creates the end product. So it's also
Hmm.
understanding how do you prompt AI in an effective way to
Hmm.
really get the information that you need. And
Sure.
um, and so it's all these like little things that once you get really good at understanding this, you can then apply. Like, I've helped people from everything from like marketing teams to like legal analysts to be able to implement and make their workflows faster and more productive, because I understand the foundations of like, how do you think through this, and then how do you apply AI to these different use cases. And then sometimes somebody will come with to me with a problem and like, no, that's not really going to be solved that well with AI right now.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I think the way I look at it, Josie, is it's not about the the uses of AI. It's not about the impact of the AI. More to do with is the mindset that we carry while
Yes.
using AI. I
Yeah.
think it is the change of mindset that needs to happen among us, among us as a leader, as an entrepreneur, to really leverage AI.
Hmm.
Uh, Now we are on the end of our time, Josie. It was, I think, our conversation can go on, and our listeners will definitely enjoy the conversation. With all those people who are logged into our live session, would request you to leave your questions on our in the comments so that Josie and I can answer to your questions. I do appreciate all of you who joined us on this edition of Leading Before the Title. Today's conversation proves that in the 2026 AI era, your title isn't your authority, your clarity is. If you are ready to stop paying the AI rework tax, you want to move from the reactive trap to the state of confident leadership. I invite you to join our AI leadership workshop briefing. It's happening on February 9th, 2026. I can share more details as and when it is ready to go live. Let's stop the noise and start the climb, because the world doesn't listen to more tools, or world doesn't need more tools. It need more leaders like you. We will see you at the top. Follow Josie Hans for the powerful insight that she has given to us. If you think our episode has made an impact, share with someone who may seek that impact right away. Thank you again, and thank you, Josie, for being on our LinkedIn Live conversation. I appreciate your time and the thoughts that you shared.
It was great being here. Thank you.